We got people shot.
This live stream captured the chaos surrounding the fatal shooting in the Capitol Hill occupied protest zone back in late June 2020.
This order and our police response comes after weeks of violence in and around the Capitol Hill occupied protest zone, including multiple shootings resulting in many injuries and 2 deaths. Death of 2 teenagers.
How long do you think Seattle in those few blocks looks like this?
I don't know. We could have the summer of love.
Meanwhile, a 16-year-old kid was essentially murdered by the group of 20-something losers who are dressing up in a dangerous game of security, playing security down at CHOP.
2 African-American men dead at a place where they claim to be working for Black Lives Matter, but they're gone. They're dead now.
The day after the shooting, former Mayor Jenny Durkin declared CHOP was unlawful and police cleared the area. We reached out to Durkin as well as former Police Chief Carmen Best for their comment on the verdict. We're waiting to hear back. As for the case, in the 5.5 years since Antonio's murder, no arrests have been made.
The mayor told the Seattle Police Department to remove barriers and abandon its own precinct, angering the department's chief.
In January, a King County jury agreed and ordered the city to pay $30.5 million to his family. The city appealed, claiming Mays likely would have died from his injuries anyway, and sought a new trial. Well, yesterday, a Superior Court judge denied those requests. The city attorney's office says it still plans to appeal that denial.
This is the podcast about Antonio Mays Jr. He was a black teenager killed at the Seattle CHOP protest. We've got new video evidence that shows what really happened. And that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast. All right, here we go. A teen was killed at a Seattle protest, the CHOP Chaz. New video evidence shows what really happened. This is a really thorough, documented piece on NPR. I know. By David Gutman, Sidney Brownstone, and Will James. So I'm not a big supporter of national propaganda radio, but every now and then, even the New York Times or CNN, gets some skilled reporters together and they compile the documents. And this is what that is on Antonio Mays Jr., who was a young man that had his life ended needlessly by protesters at the CHOP Chaz protest who were Black Lives Matter supporters and Antifa members, and he was killed. And he probably didn't need to die. His injuries were probably sustainable, but you had a no cop zone, meaning you had no first responders, and they tried to get him to the hospital, and he probably bled out needlessly. His dad won a $30.5 million settlement because the city of Seattle had liability. And in my opinion, it's always been that Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters ended the life of Antonio Mays Jr. because you're in a no cop zone and they felt threatened. You know what I mean? Somebody's son died. Horrible, horrible. The protesters are panicked. It's shortly before 3 a.m. on June 29th, 2020, Summer of Love. Remember when Mayor Jenny Durkin went on CNN and said this could be the summer of love and 2 black kids got murdered? Yeah, that's not the summer of love. That's the summer of violence. And racial justice demonstrators at an encampment in Seattle are tracking a stolen white Jeep that's driving erratically. Now, we've always been led to believe that the stolen white Jeep was shooting at people within CHOP, that it went out onto the sports field at Cal Anderson Park and was driving around in circles. Well, it kind of sounds now like, yes, the Jeep, the white Jeep was stolen, but they weren't shooting at anybody. Were they driving erratically? I mean, yeah. Does that mean they were shooting at people? No, but a few dozen tents are spread around Cal Anderson Park where protesters had set up a zone called Capitol Hill Occupy Protest or CHOP. formerly known as CHAZ, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. Some people at the camp had been armed and on high alert for weeks. Oh, they were armed. So this is the end of CHOP. This is the end of CHOP because a day or two later, boom, Mayor Durkin said, we can't have this. This looks terrible. The optics of this are horrific. Shut her down, boys. And I was there for when the police just came in and basically, ran roughshod over all these Black Lives Matter and Antifa members. Some people at the camp had been armed. I watch a dude put into his tent on the north end of Cal Anderson Park a rifle. They had a whole bunch of guns in their tents, and I watched a dude just walk across the ball field with a rifle and just nonchalantly put it back into his tent. After a car drove into a crowd of protesters and several shootings in the area, as the Jeep slowly loops around a turf play field, Cal Anderson, it comes within 10 feet of a tent and sparks a wave of fear that quickly sweeps the camp. My thought there is you got some teenage kids doing teenage kid stuff. That's what goes through my mind as a dad, right? Kids make terrible decisions. Should they have their lives ended? No. Does that sometimes happen? Yes. And somebody lost a son. Horrible, horrible. CHOP existed for 23 days in 2020, an 8-block collection of tents, graffiti, and 24-hour protests that emerged after Seattle police abandoned a precinct in the heart of the city. Now remember, the end of Antonio Mays Jr. was literally right outside the northeastern corner of the Seattle Police Department's East Precinct. Cameras everywhere. This precinct had been absolutely rocked. Cameras everywhere. They've got the footage. They know who did it. They won't say who did it because the optics are terrible. Black Lives Matters ended a black life. Yeah. How does that work? Not well. Police left after 10 days of mass protests ignited by the murder of George Floyd. Nearly every night of the standoff had ended with police blanketing the neighborhood with tear gas. After they retreated, it felt like protesters held movie nights and ended up mutual aid stations and stages for speeches and music. Initially, it was kind of peaceful, but no. Women were being R-worded, and I don't mean Republican. There was early on, there was the one murder, and then you've got this. It was not peaceful, and you had people running around with guns who had no business running around with guns because they made some terrible decisions. But on this night, 3 weeks after the birth of CHOP, the air is filled not with songs, chants, and demands for justice, paranoia, menace, and gunshots. At this point in time, the police had basically pushed them into the northeast corner of the precinct, outside of the precinct. They had their tents and their stuff, and they were kind of basically Custer's last stand behind a whole bunch of concrete barricades that the Seattle Department of Transportation had brought them. Does any of this make sense? No, just absolute lack of leadership. But you got to remember, had the same thing happen. You let a bunch of nut job protesters light the Minneapolis police station on fire. And they said, you got to leave. In the absence of police, an armed voluntary security force emerged, set up by protesters themselves. I was over there. I was live streaming that stuff. I would not do that today. I would not be over there live streaming what I did. I would not be over there at night. Those people are nut jobs. They don't understand basic human values, and that's how people end up getting murdered. Shots fired, I think, a live streamer says, capturing the moment in a dark, shaky video broadcast.
A car has been circling around, shooting more shots into tents. More shots fired, more shots fired.
For building search, the subjects removed the plate glass window from the front door.
It's that white car that's been circling around.
So the white car's out in the field, they're hearing shots, and it is believed, and this view that we're looking at right here, those are the lights onto Cal Anderson Sports Field. And this is from an adjacent, they're saying alleyway. Okay. And I can't quite make out where that is. It might be alleyway to the north and west. And this person is looking out at the field, and then they're hearing shots fired. It's my understanding the shots fired actually came from the silver Nissan Pathfinder that we'll read about. Implication is clear. People in the white Jeep are shooting at protesters in CHOP. That's the message that went out. That's what everybody heard. In reality, it doesn't sound like any shots were ever fired from the white Jeep Antonio Mays Jr. was driving. But there was the threat. Hey, this guy's just driving around. And these people are already worked up because the police have kind of quadrant them into the northeast corner of the precinct. They've got them kind of locked down to a little area because they're going to clear it out. And after the absolute you-know-what hits the fan here, they get cleared out like there's no tomorrow. Less than 10 minutes later, armed people guarding the protest zone in the absence of police shoot all 3 occupants of the Jeep. There's no cops. It's a no-cop zone. No cop shop. They literally had that. Antonio Mays Jr., age 16, was killed. Robert West, 14, was critically injured. Another teenager whose presence in the Jeep has never been previously reported was grazed by a bullet before he ran and disappeared into the night. Seattle police probably know who he is. You know what I mean? When you come in shooting, I don't think it's about that much of a surprise when you get shot back, said Colby Williams, a protester at the morning after the shooting. Were they shooting? It does not sound like they were shooting. There's no evidence to say they were shooting. Not to say that they weren't shooting, but there's no video footage. There's nobody who really witnessed them shooting. There was no gun recovered, but we'll read here, the white Jeep was absolutely picked over by the Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters because they didn't want evidence leading back to them that they killed a black teenager. This narrative, and whoever was in the Jeep was attacking racial justice protesters, and that protesters or their allies fired back in self-defense, was echoed in social media posts and throughout the encampment. It would linger for years, absolutely, but there's no evidence. The shootings and in the aftermath were all caught on video. Surveillance cameras, citizen journalists, live streamers. 6 years later, killing remains unsolved. There have been no arrests, no charges, no named suspects. And this happened literally steps from the physical structure of the Seattle East Precinct Police Department, where they have cameras up and they have footage. And you're telling me that nobody knows who did this? Well, they know. They know damn well who did it. Black Lives Matter and Antifa members. They murdered a young boy. Not that hard to figure out. City officials said, mum's the word. They all lost their cell phones, right? They either deleted their texts, the tech guy did it, I dropped my phone in the Puget Sound on the 4th of July. Miraculously, chief of police, chief of the fire department, the mayor, a bunch of the mayor's significant leadership all had their phones delete texts because they basically capped this, is my thought, is my opinion. They capped it. They said, oh, good Lord, the optics on this one are terrible. Terrible. We can't have this going out. Can't have this going out. And that's what NPR is saying as well. Seattle police say the case remains active and ongoing, but will not say more. Kind of like Tiffany Henyard in Chicago. We've got an active FBI investigation. How's that going? Well, she's living in Atlanta. She's got a clothes shop, and she's now running for Republican office. Huh. An FBI probe. Where'd that go? Well, same place as the outstanding Seattle police case. An 18-month investigation by the Seattle Times, KUOW, and NPR's Embedded podcast, and a review of more than a dozen videos from the night of the shooting reveal the most comprehensive view to date of how the chaotic scene unfolded. They show a black teenager who came to join the civil rights movement of his generation in a zone abandoned by police because leadership said to do that. ended up killed by members of a protest movement who thought he was a threat. That's exactly what I've been saying all these years, because that's who did it, right? That's who did it. These people right here did it. And by that, I don't mean, and we don't know who actually did it. Seattle police does. Seattle leadership does. What are they doing? Yeah, we can't go there, because then you've got Black Lives Matter murdering a black life. Not good. The optics on that, horrific, right? Not good. This is outside, this is on the north side of the police department. If you walk up this hill off to the left and around the corner, that's where Antonio Mays Jr. lost his life. Literally the corner of the police department. And the city said, give up the police department. This is how we're going to appease the protesters. Well, 2 kids got murdered. Nice appeasement, people. June 23rd, 2020, less than a month after George Floyd was killed, Antonio Mays Jr. left his Southern California home, set out for Seattle, a city he'd never been, no known connection. He was into fantasy novels, hip hop, and worked in his family's barbecue business, looked after his little sister. He left to join the racial protests that were sweeping the nation, but in Seattle had taken on a unique form. Before he left, he wrote his dad a note, "I'm not running from home, I'm fighting for a cause." Oh. Kids do kid things, you know what I mean? And how would he know that this would lead to what happened? He wouldn't. And that's why, hey, you should be able to protest. No issues with that. You should be able to protest about whatever you want. But when you go into a no-cop zone because city leaders have said this is a no-cop zone, things happen. And they did, and kids were dead, women were assaulted. I mean, just some horrific stuff happened. One day I want to see my sister to live in a world where her skin won't be the cause of any pain for her physically and emotionally. Ugh. How he got to Seattle, we don't know. He would resurface 3 days at a CHOP, standing shoulder to shoulder. He did this video. He did this. This was him talking to city officials.
Their purpose is to serve and protect, right? Yes. And we agree with their purpose, but we do not agree with them because of what they've been doing. They have not been serving and protecting. Actually, they've been harassing and confusing.
Harassing and murdering.
So I would like to make it known that I wish that the police would have more supervision when it comes to their training, and make sure that they're actually following their training, because when they're on these streets, they disregard all of it. And that's where the harassment steps in. And I'm tired of this. And at some point, we're going to fight back. We've been peaceful, but you're pushing us to the edge. And as you can see, as a black people, as a whole, we have been calm. If you haven't noticed. So we are not living up to the stereotypes that we're violent and dumb.
This guy right here, this guy, let's get my pointer. He gave me a hard time for filming, and I said I was meaty, and I didn't step back down. He was probably 6'5". He was big, tall dude. You had a lot of players there that were just posing, right? You had a lot of people going there, just saying a bunch of stuff, and eventually it just went absolutely sideways. 3 days after Antonio Jr. gave that speech at CHOP, he was dead. Shot seven times in the pre-dawn hours at one of the nation's most prominent protest zones. He was killed in a stolen white Jeep. Unclear whether he was involved in the theft, but he was driving it, right? Protesters and members of CHOP security were aware a car had been stolen. White Jeep appeared near the tents on the playfield. Panic calls went out over, they had CBs and they were talking on cell phones. Panic at the barricade, 2:54 a.m. The barricade being, they had a couple of barricades, and he tried to break through the main barricade, and then he came around and went north on, I think it's 11th. And that's where he ran into the other barricade, right where all the tents were from Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Security camera captures the white Jeep leave the park and drive onto a small side street. It's headed straight toward another SUV driven by a medic for CHOP security, who immediately throws it in reverse and backs away to avoid the white Jeep, which is coming at it head on. Don't know what's happening there. No idea, right? Obviously, some kind of confrontation. Then a Nissan Pathfinder appears. Someone inside starts firing at the white Jeep. The Nissan Pathfinder, this bad boy right here, that is the vehicle that was Black Lives Matter and Antifa combo security. Got a bunch of dudes in there with guns. Let's watch that. There we go. Let's do this again.
I don't know. More shots fired, more shots fired. More shots fired, more shots fired.
See, they're shooting at the white. They're shooting at the white rig. Let's watch that again.
I don't know. More shots fired, more shots fired. More shots fired, more shots fired.
It's a rifle. You can just hear it. Boom, 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 boom. The person wearing dark gray with a black bandana over their face reaches out of the front passenger window and fires what looks like a rifle at the white Jeep. Jeep approaches the Pathfinder. As it drives by, a person wearing a bright white sweatshirt reaches out the window of the Pathfinder and over the roof fires a handgun at the Jeep. They saw the Jeep as a threat. Yeah, you got a Jeep driving around doing, donuts on the field and trying to crash into barricades middle of the night. You know what I mean? No cops around, no cops coming. Pathfinder, shooters still firing, chases the Jeep down the street towards Seattle and into the night. At least 15 shots are fired. Forensic analysis hired years later by the city of Seattle to examine videos from that night did not identify any gunshots coming from the white Jeep. The only shots he identified were fired at the Jeep. For just over 3 minutes, the white Jeep carrying Antonio Mays Jr. disappears from view. It's headed west towards downtown Seattle, away from CHOP to the west, away from the Seattle precinct. Back at CHOP, webcams record how the panic has spread back to the camp. Neighbor from his 4th floor apartment stuck his cameras to his windows that live stream the scene outside the abandoned police precinct. Everybody down, someone shouts. Eyes up, eyes up, eyes up. It's clear from the scene that there are multiple people with guns at the barricades outside the precinct, and they are preparing to defend themselves. They were going to defend themselves against the cops. That was the threat. And instead, they took out this kid. Anyone with weapons, I want them behind this barrier. If you're not armed, hide, get down. Security, eyes up. We're looking for a stolen Jeep. Multiple shots fired. I need eyes on every single intersection. Everybody who is not armed, I need them on the ground. Stay low. More video. Okay, before we get into that, this is the north side. Let's see if I can get my. Yep, here we go. This is the north side of the precinct. This is the eastern side, and the Antonio Mays had his life ended like right up in here, kind of to the left of what we're looking at. Right underneath the "We Keep Us Safe" type thing. So here. So you can just hear just chaos, and she's screaming out kind of orders. The young lady that I believe was screaming out those orders, I ran across her a few times. She was kind of the leader. She was not a very big individual. She was small, but she was gnarly would be my word for her. Like, you just wouldn't want to mess with her. She came across as, I will spit you up and I will chew you up, spit you up, and not think twice about it. Kind of just, yeah. She probably weighed 110 pounds, if that. Hadn't taken a shower in Lord knows how long. But she was, you got the feeling that she's long-term Antifa. Was my thought. And she probably came from somewhere else to do this Occupy protest. Teens in the white Jeep loop back towards CHOP. They loop back around. Around 3 a.m., they made a left turn towards the precinct and the encampment. Actually, they would have looped this way, making a left. Made a left turn towards the precinct and the encampment. 3 shots ring out. The Jeep crashes into a barricade. I think Antonio Mays got shot and he crashed into the barricade because he was no longer driving. 6 more shots. Jeep tries to back up, tires squeal, then it drives forward and crashes into the barricade. 10 more shots. And I have heard those shots. It's boom, 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 boom. And then pause. Boom, 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 boom. Pause. 2 911 callers would later describe someone walking right up to the passenger side of the crashed Jeep, firing into it at close range by a Black Lives Matter supporter / Antifa member. Shadow appears just outside the Jeep's passenger side, and then a voice. Oh, you're not dead. Yo, you want to get pistol whipped. Horrible, horrible, as the kid is bleeding out. Here we go. Boom, single gunshot. Terrible, terrible. So, there's little save the initial cries of panic to support the narrative that's lingered for years that Antonio and the 2 other boys were shot because they attacked the protest. Joint investigation, NPR's embedded podcast, Seattle Times, KUOW reached out to nearly 100 people connected with the protests, and this was the most common explanation. Years after the shooting, protesters maintained that Antonio Jr. and the other teenagers inside the white Jeep represented a threat that had to be eliminated. Well, they did believe that, and they did act accordingly. And unfortunately, that ended up with Antonio losing his life. Terrible. No guns, bullet, or shell casings were ever found on Antonio Jr. or Robert West in the Jeep. City's forensic video analyst did not identify any gunshots being fired from the white Jeep. Any official investigation of the killing is complicated by the handling of the scene and what happened after the final shots were fired. Livestream videos from that night capture people warily approaching the shooting scene. Soon more than a dozen people. 2 minutes of the shooting, at least 30 people surround the Jeep. None of them are police. Protesters and volunteer medics pull the 2 boys out of the car and try to treat their wounds. There were multiple volunteer medics. These were just people that were identified as having some kind of medical training, and people were getting shot. There were other shootings that had happened. I mean, it was chaos. It was sheer chaos because they're trying to police, they're trying to provide their own internal first responders, and they're not able to do that. Robert is loaded. The second kid is loaded in a private car and driven to the hospital. About 10 minutes after the final barrage of gunfire, Antonio is loaded into the silver Nissan Pathfinder, the same one that was shooting at him. Same car that was shooting at him earlier, and driven towards an ambulance. The ambulance driver seems to view the Pathfinder as a threat and drives away because it was just in the middle of a shooting. You've also got a situation here where if you got an active shooting scene, it needs to be cleared by the police. Where are the police? They're a handful of blocks away, looking up the street corner at what's going on because they've been told to stand down and evacuate the East Precinct. This is on Seattle leadership. This is on Seattle leadership, right? Ambulance driver, he's going to book it out of there. Hey, this scene isn't contained. That is protocol. Protocol. This scene isn't contained. You got who knows who's coming up on me. I'm getting the F out of here. So I have no issues with what happened with the ambulance driver, but that is some of what probably led to the ambulance driver, taking off and Antonio Mays Jr. probably not making it. Because had he, gotten in the ambulance, had they been able to get him into the ambulance, could have been a different story. We don't really know, right? I mean, you can always make guesses, but doesn't help. Information the ambulance driver is getting over the radio is confusing and contradictory. One emergency dispatcher says the silver Pathfinder is the suspect, meaning the white car. Another emergency responder chimes in over the radio and tries to correct the dispatcher. No, they say, the Pathfinder has the victim in it. Nobody knows. It's just absolute chaos, which is what most of CHOP was. Well-intentioned to start off with, and then it just went down crazy train road. Some would say not well-intentioned at all. Just chaos from the beginning. Precious minutes go by before Antonio, grievously wounded, reaches a hospital. Back at the shooting scene, White Jeep is riddled with bullets, bullet holes in the front windshield, rear windshield, side windows shot out, shattered. People mill around, peering into the Jeep, captured by a shaky camera that someone is streaming live to Instagram.
I don't trust, but you needed to be here.
Yeah, y'all don't know
thank
who
you.
I am.
I know. I don't care to know. All I know is thank you. That's it. All right, I'm going to go back. Don't touch it. Don't touch shit.
Don't touch it. Unless you see any shells on the ground, pick those up, pocket them, take them home.
Hell yeah. No evidence.
What?
No evidence. Why do you want no evidence? Well, you just ended a young man's life. And you don't want that coming back on you. So, I mean, crazy.
Evidence. Pick that shit up. Yep.
Pick up my shells. Because I want to get the fuck out of here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, hey, I'm sorry I got to take off, but
no,
I don't
know.
trust the cops.
I don't trust, but you needed to be here.
Yeah, y'all don't know
thank
who
you.
I am.
I know. I don't care to know. All I know is thank you. That's it.
If that right there doesn't just, oof, yeah. And then they talk about the verbal we just heard. Sirens wail in the distance. No other sign of police. People continue to mill around the Jeep. 3:23 a.m. A young man in a hooded sweatshirt with bright white sleeves approaches a live streamer. He comes up. This is just nuts right here.
Zay Honcho, man, out here saving lives. Zay Honcho, Zayhunchoo. Rest in peace, my brother that came through.
Rest in peace.
He had to, but he got clapped, and we brought him to the hospital. But whatever happened, bro. But we out here to save lives and do shit for the people. And this is what happens, bro. So no violence is coming.
So who?
Save lives by killing a life? Yeah. This is where the whole thing to me is so wildly misguided. It just went off tracks. They really thought that they were doing the right thing. And at the end of the day, 2 kids got killed at a Black Lives Matter deal.
Whose car is this, though? This is your people's car?
This is a stolen vehicle.
But this is your people's car?
Spun through, and we...
Who was driving it?
Active shooters. Active shooters came through in a stolen vehicle. They spun around the field a few times, and then they tried to come through our barrier, through our main entrance, bro. And our people are having it. We already had the right tire out, and they fucking drew down and took them out the car, and we gave them service.
We gave them service. We killed them, is what he's saying. We gave them service. That's Omari Salisbury. He did a lot of coverage over there. I ran into him a bunch of times. Converge Media. I don't know what happened to him. So we go a couple of blocks away. There are at least 9 police cars parked, idling. Police body cams show a group of officers, weapons drawn, round a corner, walk toward the site of the shooting. To see if we can get our eyes on the vehicle, let's see if there's still a crime scene, but they stop short about a block away. One officer studies the crime scene through binoculars. Okay, here we go. No. Okay, so this is Little Big Burger. I ate at Little Big Burger 2 days before this shooting happened with my podcast producer, Darian, and his significant other at the time, Brooke. If you guys remember any of my live streams, Brooke was a fan favorite, pretty young lady with dark long hair. Her parents listen to my podcast. If they're out there, hey, how we doing? And hey, Brooke. All right, let's keep going. So this is a block down the street. What we're looking at is up into the center of this screen is where the shooting happened. So the Little Big Burger is across the street. It's on the east side of the street, on the southeast corner. And on the northwest corner of this block is where the Seattle Precinct is. And so these cops are kind of hiding about a block away from the active shooting scene.
They're all fucking around looking at it. The vehicle made it through the barrier, and it is currently surrounded by Chaz residents. Looks like they're digging through it.
They're destroying evidence is what they're doing. They're covering their tracks.
What do you want us to do from this point?
What's in from Charlie 70?
Yes, sir. I can see the vehicle with binoculars. It made it through the barricades. It's inside the borders of Chaz, and it is surrounded by folks inside there, and it looks like they're digging through the vehicle.
Copy that. You do not need to keep that observation position. You can release from that break.
Officer says that when the sun comes up, homicide detectives will process the crime scene. 4 hours later, 4 hours, 7:45 a.m., police arrive at the crashed Jeep. Detectives searched the Jeep for evidence. It was clear the crime scene had been disturbed. More than 6 years later, no one has been charged in the killing or even named as a suspect. There are more videos of the shooting from an even closer vantage point. They have not been made public. Police surveillance cameras on the walls of the abandoned precinct directly overlooked the scene of the shooting. Seattle police confirmed that footage from those cameras is part of their homicide case, but declined to release it. Because you're going to have to indict a whole bunch of people, and the optics on that are horrible. Horrible. Hey, you guys murdered a young kid, and nothing's being done about it. Nothing's being done about it. Dozens of interviews over the 18-month investigation. People who were at or near the scene of the shooting have either said they know nothing about it or refused to what they know. It's like what's the number one rule of Fight Club? You don't talk about Fight Club. I mean, why would you talk about it? You're involved. Those who are involved, they're complicit. Police say that to solve the case, they need witnesses from CHOP. All right. They need protesters, medics, security to speak up. Really? Really? You know, just look at the footage and go, all right, let's start with this one. Let's get somebody to roll over on everybody else. We need people to come forward, former Seattle Police Chief John Barnes said last year. We need people who were there inside of the area to come forward. Hey, you had it all on camera. You've got the footage. You know what I mean? But from the top down, this has been, we're not doing anything on this one. We're going to let this one go. Barnes was pressured into resigning last Thursday. His replacement is the 5th leader for the Seattle Police Department since CHOP. 5. That's wild. It's a wild accounting. It shows a very different picture than what we had been led to believe, but there was a lot of chaos. There's just a lot of just who really knows what's going on. But at the end of the day, the results are still the same. Somebody's son is no longer with them, and that is horrific. That is horrific. So, crazy. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Have you subscribe, that notification bell. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.